Hey everyone, welcome back to another session right after our networking half an hour session. I'm really excited to hear how it went for you. And right now, I have another expert, Kristi, who works as a VP of Customer Success at a company called ClientSuccess. And we are excited to talk about, let's see, the evolution of customer success in the world of CX. Kristi, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Natalie. I'm really excited about this topic. It seems to be a hot one for a lot of organizations who are starting to now really think about and focus on the customer's experience, even outside of their ability to achieve their goals. So that's what we're going to cover today, is the evolution of customer success as we enter this world of customer experience and the importance of that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, well, aren't customer success and customer experience the same thing? I must hear this all the time. And I think, some of this comes just from lack of education and understanding on what the two are. In many organizations, especially in the B2B SaaS space, it's not uncommon for the responsibility of customer experience to fall under the customer success umbrella. But the two are very different. In fact, they're not the same at all. They do work in conjunction together to hopefully help you retain and grow customers, right? Lifelong raving fans, but they are exclusive and have really different outcomes and benchmarks of measurement. So I think the first thing to just know is that, well, quite frankly, they're not the same thing. And how we think about it, how we organize our business around the two needs to be very different. And so the cool thing that we are seeing a lot now is this kind of new function within many businesses, and that is just having some leaders and resources dedicated to customer experience exclusively. And that is really kind of the output of the two being so different. So let's talk about that. When I had to really put some pen to paper and think about, well, okay, how could we define experience and success so differently, right? So that it is very clear for folks to understand what's going on. The first thing to understand is that about experience, it's the overall impression that a customer might have about your brand as they've engaged through all of their interactions, right? So think about that. Especially, I'm going to use the example of B2B SaaS just because it's one I'm very intimately familiar with. But in the world of SaaS, right, it's every touch point. Customer success, technical support, onboarding, professional services, all of the functions that sometimes fall under the customer success umbrella are not the only teams impacting and engaging and kind of interacting with your customers, right? It does stem way beyond that. And so when we think about customer experience as its own function and kind of the level of importance it holds, let's separate that out from what customer success is, which really focuses on the end result and the business impact your partnership or your product will have on a customer. Now, this looks very different and behaves differently if you're in B2B or B2C, right? It's going to look a little different, but the core value points of each remain the same. You have to think about experience in the terms of, how a product or how a brand, how a company makes you feel, right? As a customer, as an end user of that product, of that company. And customer success really focuses on your ability to achieve whatever goal it is that you set out for when you engage with that brand. Now, if we're using something really simple, right? I'll take we'll use a hammer and a nail because that's usually an easy enough analogy, right? If I go to the store, I go buy a hammer, my goal is to be able to like maybe hang a picture or nail something together, and that's going to be my goal. But the experience I have with it, with my purchase, right, all of those things is very different, right? So your experience versus the impact of whatever it is you're purchasing are going to have two very different metrics of measurement in terms of how you're evaluating the success of each. So that's the most important thing, is just to really be clear and tight on the fact that these two things are not the same, but they're both required in order to retain customers, to keep them, to grow those raving fans. You have to do both well, because you could have a very great experience, right? You could love the people that you work with. You could love the interactions you've had. But if at the end of the day, you weren't able to achieve whatever goal you set out for, you might not continue to use their service or to purchase their product again. So while they're different, they're both a requirement in order to drive that business outcome that most of us are trying to achieve with our customers. So I use this visual and I kind of put our customers at the heart of this, right? Because that's where they are. They're at the center, that nucleus. And it's important to think about these things, like I said, through the lens of how a brand makes me feel and my ability to be successful with a brand. And so there's so many different factors that play in when you think about how each of them work, how they operate, and how they impact an end user. And so when I think about customer experience, right, I might think about things like the response time, right? You submit a support ticket, you want to hear a response back in a timely manner. You want to make sure that it's a thorough response, right? You're going to get the information that you need. It's going to make you feel at ease because you've solved that problem in a quick amount of time, right? So definitely the response time. I just think that that's an interesting one because response time doesn't mean technical support. It can mean anytime you're asking anybody a question, anytime that there is an action that you're asking somebody to take, their ability to support you quickly makes a difference. Right? I'll give you an example. I had to call Best Buy recently because my washing machine broke and I needed something fixed. And we were on hold for 2 hours and we pay for a premium service. We paid for the upgraded warranty, right? So it's really important to just make sure that you're getting timely responses and you're helping your customers navigate that effectively. The next thing is the relationship. I think about this as kind of almost at the core of customer experience, right? The ability to build and develop strong relationships with a brand. Have you ever called someone and had a great interaction with them? They were very positive and cheery and helpful, right? Even in a quick exchange. And then you think about the relationship you might develop with your customer success manager or an executive at a company, right? Those relationships help foster and create this really strong experience over time if it's a positive one. Your communications, right? Communications, the words that you use, how you deliver them, the empathy which you lead, which with I have empathy separate, but communication is so key to delivering really strong experiences. And this could be written and it could be verbal, it could be nonverbal, right? But all of that plays a big part of it. Even the things that you have on your website, right? I talk about my customers needing to go to our knowledge base. And so communication might not be something that I'm controlling in that moment, but they're having that dialogue, that internal dialogue with the content that we're making available to them, right? So everything that you're putting out there. Trust. I think trust is almost at the core of everything, right? It's at the core of relationships, it's at the core of experience. But if you can really develop and foster really strong trust with your end users, right? Where they trust your product, they trust that you're reliable, they trust that you're credible, right? They trust that it's about you, then at the end of the day, you're going to strengthen that experience for them over time. And the last is empathy. I think that in a post-pandemic world, if we can even say that we're there yet, empathy is probably more important than ever. And so being empathetic always to your customers in every situation, positive or negative, is going to be key to really kind of anchoring on a positive experience. Now, on the flip side of that, right, you've got customer success, which really heavily anchors on, again, their ability to be successful. And success looks very different. So program management, I think about that, right? The ability to orchestrate a strong program to help your customers achieve those outcomes. That's really going to be important and critical to their success. The ability to manage them through that life cycle over time, the ability to help them achieve those goals, right? And move those KPIs internally. That's going to be part of that success factor. I think about onboarding, right? A customer can only be successful using your software. I'm going to stick to that B2B example again here in this example, but onboarding, right? How you onboard your customers, not only into your technology, but into the partnership, is going to strengthen their ability to be successful. Now, this dovetails into training and enablement. It's not just good enough to have your customers have the platform configured in a way that they can use it, but helping them be able to use it through that coaching, right? That training, that enablement, that ongoing education is key, because as your product evolves, so does that need for training and enablement. So really making sure that you're educating your customers on how to independently use and leverage and drive value from your product. The next one is adoption, right? Your customers have to have the ability to adopt the solution in a way to achieve those goals. So if they're using it and they've adopted it into their workflow, this is all part of change management, which could dovetail out of project and program management, but helping them through that journey is going to make sure that they're using your software effectively. And the last component I have here is goal tracking, right? I always say you can't manage what you can't measure. You have to be able to understand where you are and where you're going. And more importantly, as a customer success professional, how you're going to help your customers get there. So like I said, these are two sides, but to the same outcome. I cannot get my customers to be those raving fans to really partner with us for a long time if we're not having both of these achieved, right? They have to have that positive experience. And I will say something on the experience front. Your experience doesn't need to always be stellar, right? We can't all be Disney and deliver that delightful experience. But if you can be consistent in the experience that you deliver, consistency is sometimes great for our customers. So be consistent and think about how that consistency impacts their ability to have a positive experience. Now on the success side, right? Again, you can't achieve this ultimate goal of raving fan if your customers aren't achieving those goals. So you've got to figure out, one, how to define those and figure out what it is that your customers are ultimately trying to achieve with the partnership. And then how are you going to get them there? Now, we're not in many cases services organizations, but if you are, it's a lot easier to figure out how you're going to get to that goal. But if you're not, right, if you are in B2B SaaS, you're going to have to figure out a way to help your customers help themselves. But you've got to be able to understand early indicators of what that engagement will look like, what that risk looks like, and be able to guide them. So if you do these two things really well, this is kind of that perfect formula for having that raving fan, that customer for life, right? That growth that we all want to see long term, but can't happen if we don't have both of these. Now, I get this a lot from folks, right? Yes, I get it, Kristi. I understand. We need both of these things. But if the whole company impacts your customer's experience and I'm only responsible for customer success, how do I get folks bought in? Right? How do I get them to understand that what they do, what they don't do, can impact our customers and the experience they're having? Well, if you've got a designated or dedicated customer experience function, hopefully that they're leading the charge, right? This is a cross-functional initiative. This is not something that can be owned and really operated well within just the customer success function because you don't have oversight over every other business unit, right? You don't have the ability to dictate how and where and why things happen the way they do, although we all wish we did. But because we don't, it's a little bit more difficult. So if you're in a customer experience role, hopefully you have been empowered to go and orchestrate this really well across your entire business, right? You might spend time diving deep into each function and understanding how they do things and what is the end experience, the end user's experience. What does that look like for our customers? And are they getting what they need at the time that they need it? So you can go and evaluate all of that. But in a lot of cases, if you are like me and customer success falls within, customer experience falls within the customer success umbrella, it's a little tricky. And so trying to get impact, you really do need to get buy-in across the business for each person, each team, each executive to understand the impact that their teams are having directly on our customers. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I'm a very visual learner. And so for me, images work a lot more than me just speaking at folks. And sometimes even customers coming to share their stories verbally helps. But as a visual person, I can sometimes put together something that will articulate for our stakeholders what that looks like. And so take this slide, for example. Now, this is not a complete customer journey by any means, but what I did do here is I highlighted sometimes where we win and sometimes where we lose and how other functions can directly impact that for our customer. So if you look here, I've got like CX and CS, and sometimes it's red and sometimes it's green, and red in this case is going to be bad. Green in this case will be good. So if we start at the beginning, right, I've given this visual and painted this story, right? In the CX experience for our customer, if you send your invoice before you even have any engagement with your customer, right? Deals closed. Imagine this. You're the customer. You sign the contract. Great. You send it through DocuSign. It's all signed, sealed, and delivered. And then all of a sudden, the next thing that pops up in your inbox is an invoice. That's not a great experience. You're charging me. We haven't even kicked off yet. Now, it's not like I'm not going to pay, but couldn't you sequence that a little bit differently? Maybe send the invoice 2 or 3 days later, right? Even though we all know that there's net terms and conditions for payments, but just think about what that experience might look like. Even delaying that email so that it sends maybe not exactly when the customer signs, but delaying it a couple hours so that the sales and the customer success team has the ability to lean in and really start to engage with that customer to get the partnership kicked off, right? So that's an example of a time where we failed in customer experience. And this had nothing to do with the customer success team, the onboarding team, the sales team. this could actually even have nothing to do with anybody. It could be something set up in technology. But in that moment, we failed our customers by creating a poor experience by sending that invoice. Right. So that's a point where, hey, Mr. Finance, Mr. CFO, can we do something different there to create a different experience? Now, the next one I had here, customer success. We had a winning moment where we had a strong kickoff call with our customer, right? So this is a moment where we're driving the right impact through customer success to help us get started with that partnership. Now, the third one, your support team responded really quickly and provided a thorough response, right? So your customer, they just came on board. They're really excited to get started, but they were looking for something, couldn't figure it out. So they submitted a ticket. Now imagine in that moment, your support team right away, they respond to it. They give a thorough response. Your customer responds with like a high CSAT review score, 5 stars, excellent. You've just had a very positive experience led by your support team. Now we continue through this journey, right? And now your onboarding team, they're not able to demonstrate best practices or offer the use cases, right? Your customer is looking for them to be consultative and they're like, well, tell me what other customers are doing or how can I configure this? But if your onboarding team isn't prepared to have those conversations or answer those questions, you've now had a bad impact on their ability to be successful. So this one actually could be twofold, right? It could be a bad experience. Hey, I was expecting this person to know this and they didn't. It's also going to hinder their ability to be successful because they're not able to progress their program, their efforts, their project the way they would have liked. Now, in that next one I have here, your customer attended a conference and the CEO didn't know they were a customer. Oof. Not a great experience, right? I'm there. I'm excited. I'm at a conference. I'm going to go over to the vendor booth and I'm going to go check out, our partner that we've just signed a contract with. And I go to introduce myself to the CEO and he doesn't even know that we're a customer. That might be a poor experience. Now, in this case, it's the leadership team, right? Just know who your customers are. It seems like an easy one, right? But this is another example of where you can fail an experience by not having all the appropriate buy-in. The next one here, my last example, is your product team partnered with a customer on a successful beta, which was a must-have feature for them, right? They had submitted this feature idea months ago. Your product team finally built it, finally getting it to beta. They pulled your customer in to partner, get feedback. Your customer is pumped. Not only do they feel like they were heard, they felt like they got what they needed. They felt like it was a timely manner, and the beta has been really productive for them. And now they have early access to this really cool new functionality, right? So your product team scored big points here, not only from a customer success standpoint, because now that customer has what they need, but also from an experience standpoint. Your customer felt heard. They felt acknowledged, and now they have something that's a value that was designed and created, which feels almost just like for them, right? So by telling a story like this and using the examples that are relevant to your business, your model, and your customer base, you can help others understand the impact that their teams, their function, their technology even, and what impact that's having on the customer's ability to be successful long term. Now, again, remember, you need the success and you need the experience to both be working hand in hand in order for your customers to be those raving fans. So using something like this, whether it's a visual, whether it's through storytelling, whether it's inviting a customer who's felt that, they've had a very poor experience, share their stories, or a customer who's had really positive experiences, come and share their stories. But usually being able to tell a story, to paint a picture, helps to get that buy-in, right? Just telling people, hey, we need to do this because we need to do this, doesn't really evoke a lot of excitement and a lot of urgency. So making sure that you have the ability to paint the narrative will help support that buy-in. And this is something we hear from folks all the time because, again, because experience is overarching and cross-functional, you need everyone's support. You cannot win this alone. So going back to my other point earlier where I talked about you can't manage what you can't measure, I'm really big on measuring what matters and trying to figure out, what are the things that are going to be important to our business, to our customers, in understanding what success looks like over time. So I'll start with voice of the customer. In terms of a KPI, this has a whole bucket full. These are tons of metrics that I love to dive into to understand how my customers feel about the partnership, right? We'll do things like our various surveys, NPS, which is our Net Promoter Score, right? Understanding if your customers are willing to recommend your product or your services to others, whether it be their peers or colleagues. A CSAT, so your customer satisfaction score, which you might deploy at the end of a support interaction. Although a CSAT can be used at various points in the customer's journey to just get their feedback, right? It could be through any engagement, right? How did we do? How do you feel? Did we answer your questions? I know I took a flight this week. I went to Austin. I thought I was going to say Atlanta. Went to Austin to go visit a prospect. And, I remember I'm getting off Delta, and before I do, I'm offboarding, and they're like, we're going to send out a survey. Let us know how we did, right? It's all those moments and times where you can hear and learn from what you've done with your customers. So creating those moments of feedback is critical at all different various points. Customer effort score. I love this. If you're not familiar with this, a lot of technologies will actually deploy a customer effort score survey in the product, which tries to gather information around how easy was their product to use in that moment, right? So were you able to do what it is that you were trying to do, right? As you kind of clicked around and navigated the platform. Getting that feedback in real time based on something your customer is trying to do or achieve is going to be critical, right? How easy was it? Well, ease of use definitely impacts experience. So that's a great one to figure out. I talk about feedback from anywhere. I'll take feedback from anywhere I can get it, right? Support tickets, review sites, surveys. So anywhere where you can capture your customer's sentiment, especially in real time, and that funnel that back in a way that you can take action on it is really critical to your ability to enhance your customer's experience. So voice of customer ends up being my first recommended bucket of what are some of the KPIs that you can leverage and dig into to understand your impact on experience. The next one I have here is advocacy. We're all trying to build customers into advocates. Advocates become your biggest sales engine, right? Think about how many times you've asked a friend before you were going to purchase something, hey, what'd you think about that? Or did you like it? Or I'm looking at such and such and want to know your opinion on it. If you've got customers who are out there serving as advocates, you need to leverage them to help fill that funnel for you. So advocacy is a great way for me to assess if my customers are willing to be our advocates in a positive and very vocal, visible way. That's going to be great in terms of how I understand their experience with our brand. People that have negative experiences aren't going to be advocates, right? They're not going out there to tell you to go buy more and use this. So when I think about advocacy, the KPIs I look at there are your reference programs, right? How many of your customers are willing to be references for you? Or how many have been references for you? Referrals. How many times has your customer been a part of second order revenue or recommended the product to somebody else? Come back and repurchase your product. Case studies, right? Your customer who's willing to share the successes that they've had in a way that you can broadcast and use for marketing purposes or put on your website, right? But being able to partner very closely with a customer who's been wildly successful to share their story is a huge sign of advocacy. Whether your customers are willing to be speakers, right? Maybe you do webinars, you do events, and you want them to speak at that. Maybe they are speaking at another event and talking about your product, right? They're an advocate in that sense. Or maybe you're just having an event and they're active participants. Those are all signs of advocacy. And if you've got ways to measure that, you'll be able to understand your ability to positively impact your customer's experience. The third one is behavior. I'm big on assessing behavior because I do think that behavior speaks volumes about how people feel about something, right? If I really love something or someone, I'm going to be highly engaged, right? So I look at engagement. And so from a customer success standpoint, engagement is really big, especially if you have a high engagement model, right? In my universe, I try to engage with our customers on a regular cadence. So if my customers are engaging with us, actively participating in those conversations, coming prepared, participating and contributing to the agenda, those are all good signs. If they are participating in the partnership, it could be by giving us feedback or participating in these advocacy programs, right? The behavior that they're demonstrating there would give me a sense of, are we doing a good job meeting their needs and also delivering a good and positive experience? And you'll see other things, right? Like usage and adoption. I talked about the ability to lead experience through a solution, right? So again, if you're a SaaS company and you've got a product, right, being able to see and assess your ability to be impactful from an experience standpoint through those KPIs is also going to be critical. And the last bucket I have here is definitely not the least, but your net revenue retention, right? Customers who are happy, customers who are enjoying their experience, customers who are achieving their goals, customers who see value in the partnership, customers who assess your partnership and hold it in a very high regard, they're going to stay with you. They're going to grow with you, right? So understanding those metrics. Now, not all those metrics are good, right? Some metrics could be bad. Your inability to retain a customer could be indicative of your inability to provide a good experience, right? So pay attention to churn, pay attention to contraction, right? Just because a customer doesn't leave entirely doesn't mean that's a good sign. A customer who's not willing to spend as much as they had been spending, right? A customer who's had upsells or who's had downsells or who's had expansion or cross sell. These are all different KPIs that we can pay attention to that will help us understand if we've been successful. So in terms of how you measure this, there's a ton of different ways, right? They say skin the cat. I hate that analogy, but there's a lot of different KPIs you can look at, ways that you can measure this. You've got to hone in on the things that are going to be important to you. But these are a whole bunch of KPIs that I have found very valuable and help us tell a story on where we need to improve and also tell us what we should continue doing. And that's it. I think we'll open it up to Q&A.
Awesome. I love the idea about the advocacy. Especially it's so easy for SaaS companies that have a community. So like a group, for example, even if it's just a Facebook group, many times I've seen happy users comment in the group saying, hey, I had such a great success with the tool. And this is the great time for the support team or success team to reach out and say, hey, you saw this comment, love that you have such a great experience, would love to feature you either in the community, on the website, I mean, whatever, right? Like this is a perfect opportunity for our teams to reach out to those people and capture this as much as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all those moments in time. That's why, we talk about voice of the customer. Your customer's voice is in a million places that you don't even know. And so the more visibility you have into that, the better off you'll be, because all feedback is good feedback, and how you leverage it will either enhance or deteriorate your program.
Awesome. We do have a couple of questions. We're probably going to have time for one. Stella is asking, what's one thing SaaS companies can do tomorrow to improve their customer experience?
All right, so I'm going to give you my silver bullet. Go have a conversation with your customer. Go pick a customer and go interview them. I have found that the most enlightening learnings I've captured about who we are and what we do well and where we can improve comes directly from those conversations. So if you can go and tackle that as just your one silver bullet, what can you do tomorrow, Stella? That is the one thing you do tomorrow, because easily you can go get on a call with a customer and ask them, right? How are we doing? What's your experience been like? Where can we improve? What are we doing really well? And I'm telling you, you get the right customer, you'll learn a ton, and hopefully you take that information back internally and share it with the rest of your team.
This was an amazing piece of advice. Thank you so much, Kristi, for this. And thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Natalie. Pleasure to be here.
For anyone looking to connect with you, share with us how can they connect with you and just get to know a little bit more about the company.
Absolutely. So best place to find me would be on LinkedIn. You can look for Kristi Faltorusso. Again, I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at ClientSuccess. And if you're interested in our platform, you can go check us out at www.clientsuccess.com.
Awesome. Kristi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, we'll see you in the next session.